Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the third season of TakeStock Live, investor webinar series, which goes live every Wednesday, 15 minutes after market close. This third season will run into March with lots of mining and some tech. Today's co-host, and I'll just let you see this. Today's co-host is Sam Greer of Sterling Capital. Sterling is a Calgary-based investor relations firm founded in 2005. Sterling links sources of capital to growing public companies with a primary focus on executing effective roadshows for TSX, TSXV, and CSE-listed companies. Next week, we'll have a co-host with Harbor Access, and this show will be featuring the three companies you see: Amerigo Resources, Essex Minerals, and Rock Ridge Resources. We would like to thank the TMX Group and TSX Venture Exchange for helping us keep the conversation between companies and investors going in these very unusual times. We'd also like to recognize the vital support provided by Fasken, MNP, Lee Jones Gable, Olympia Trust, and also thank our supporters. There are many of them, but they include Calgary Meg and CIM, CHF Capital, Conduit Capital, and many others. Particular thanks to InvestmentPitch Media and the Newswire for helping us get the message out. At this point, I'd like to turn the mic over to my colleague and our moderator, Mark Francis.
Thank you, Raj, and welcome all of you, our attendees and guest presenters. Note our disclaimer. This presentation is for information only and is not a solicitation to buy or sell stock. Companies pay fees to present at TakeStock, and TakeStock and its principals, Raj Joshi and Mark Francis, may have equity investments in companies we invite to present, may consult to the companies, and make no representation or investment or other recommendation in regards to these presenting or any other companies. You should do due diligence and seek professional investment advice. Some housekeeping matters for attendees. You will note a red Reconnect tab at the top of your screen. If you lose audio, just click it and you will be reconnected. If you ask a question using the chat board, please be clear as to whom your question is being addressed. Today we have two mining companies, Ion Energy Limited and Kodiak Copper Corp. Each will have a 9-minute presentation with PowerPoint, followed by a group Q&A session. We encourage you to do your due diligence, go to SEDAR, and connect with the companies directly in order to get detailed information. Contact details for the presenters can be found on our website, takestocklive.com. And now, let's have Sam Greer moderate the presentation portion. Sam?
Well, thanks very much, Raj and Mark. It's always a great pleasure to be here. Today we have two companies presenting that we quite like at Sterling. Kodiak Copper, which is a 62 million market cap company focused on its 100% owned copper porphyry projects in Canada and the US, and Ion Energy, which is a 23 million market cap company focused on exploring Mongolia's lithium salars. Both companies have got great projects as well as management teams, and today we have two very high caliber executives presenting. Leading the first presentation is the president and CEO of Kodiak Copper, Claudia Tornquist. Claudia holds an MBA and master's degree in engineering. She has a very accomplished career in the mining sector. She was recently, in her past career, she was GM at Rio Tinto's copper and diamond operations as well. Claudia, it's great having you here. Please fill us in on Kodiak.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here. It's a pleasure. Let me share my screen and take you through Kodiak's story. Kodiak is an exploration company, copper gold exploration. Last year, 2020, was a great year for our shareholder. We made a discovery. It was obviously a great success, and we have lots more in store for 2021. Keep in mind that I will be making forward-looking statements during this presentation, and you can find the relevant guidance on our website. First of all, why are we in copper? The fundamentals for copper look fantastic, really quite unusual, all driven by the green revolution, electric vehicles, clean energy, etc. All these very high growth energy industries require a lot more copper, 3, 4, 5, 6 times more copper than the industries they replace. And so there is a huge amount of copper demand on the horizon and very little supply to match. So the world needs more copper. Rio Tinto CEO summed it up best. He said in the next 25 years, the world will need more copper than in the last 500 years. And that's what our business is. We are in the business of finding copper and gold. The people behind the company, Kodiak was founded by Chris Taylor, whom you might know from Great Bear, the other company he founded, our sister company. Great Bear is one of the great exploration successes in Canada or worldwide in the last couple of years. Big gold discovery. Chris is a great geologist. He is often thought of as a gold guy, but his background really is in copper. That's where he spent the first almost 10 years of his career. And so it's great to have him lead our technical work. Myself, my background is more the business, financial, commercial side. I worked for Rio Tinto for 9 years and also on some of the largest copper mines in the world. For example, Escondida in Chile or Oyu Tolgoi in Mongolia. Importantly, also John Robbins, part of our team. He's an advisor and shareholder. And John founded the Discovery Group, of which we are part. You see here all the companies that are part of Discovery. It's a great group of people and companies. And for us at Kodiak, it gives us unparalleled access to expertise, contacts, capital, and so on. We are a much stronger company as part of Discovery than we would be just out there on our own. And so now, without much ado, let me talk a bit more about our NPD project where we made a discovery. And to start, I have a little video that gives an overview.
Kodiak Copper is located in British Columbia's prolific copper belt known as the Quesnel Trough, which runs through the south of the province. Kodiak has caught the market's attention with a new copper-gold discovery at its NPD project.
NPD is very accessible. It's a 3 hours drive from Vancouver near the towns of Merritt and Princeton. Infrastructure and accessibility is obviously very important for economic potential and future development. What's great about the NPD project is its location. We are here in southern BC, where you can work year-round, and in a very established mining area. There are a number of large mines nearby, for example, Copper Mountain or also Highland Valley, New Afton. So it's a very established mining area, and everything you need for an exploration project is right at our fingertips, which makes our work very cost-effective.
One of the things I noticed when we were reviewing the NPD project initially was the presence of copper oxides over many kilometers on surface. So what it indicated was that we were sitting on top of a major porphyry system. And certainly the right type of rocks that indicated that there could be a major discovery to be made. This project has the potential to host a major copper porphyry discovery. And of course, with the drilling that we've done recently, we've shown that that's the case. Now, on initial review of this project, what was really impressive is that we had over 100 drill holes over 10 kilometers, and all of these holes have copper in them. And when we're looking at the rock, we saw the right types of rocks and the right types of features that indicated we could be sitting on top of a major copper system.
The NPD project was drilled historically since the 60s, so for over 50 years. And most of this historic drilling was very shallow, almost all only down to between 100 and 200 meters. And that is where we saw the opportunity. So we drilled deeper, we drilled down to over 800 meters. And that's where we got our first discovery hole right here at this location. It was a hole that was mineralized top to bottom and had in the middle a very nice high-grade zone. That was the first time that we saw that in this large porphyry system, there are higher grade zones present.
This is some of the best looking drill core that has been drilled in this part of British Columbia. Now we're located here, we're in Merritt, and that means that in all the areas around us, we have copper mines in both directions. What you typically see in this region is about 1/3 of the grade. The grade that we've drilled here on the copper and the gold side is 3 or 4 times higher than many of the mines in this area. The types of alteration that we see, the potassic feldspar alteration, the silicification, the presence of chalcopyrite, the presence of bornite, these are all indicative features of a strongly mineralized copper center.
We've made a great start and had some fantastic high-grade results early on in our drill program. We have now gained Teck Resources as a major shareholder. So now we have our work cut out. We have a large 10 square kilometer area of historic drilling and have only poked deeper holes into one small corner of it. That means lots more drilling to come and lots more potential for our shareholders to be unlocked. It'll be an exciting time for Kodiak going forward.
Kodiak.
Oops. So this was a quick overview of the MPD project. Let me dive a little bit deeper. You see here the map where the project is located, a very established mining area in southern BC. Couple of big mines nearby. Copper Mountain, a big copper mine, is 40 kilometers to our south, and Highland Valley, another very large copper mine owned by Teck, 50 kilometers to the north. So established area, very accessible, great infrastructure, year-round work. So great place to be. As I mentioned in the video, the project has been drilled intermittently since the 60s by a variety of players. You see here some of the results. I won't bore you with the details, but the key points to take away are there is copper and gold drilled over a large area, 10 square kilometers. So we knew when we bought the project, this is a large system. And all the drilling was all very shallow, as you would typically do 50 years, 20 years ago. And we drilled deeper. We looked at it and thought, we're sitting on top of a large system here. Nobody has ever drilled deep enough. So we drilled deeper, and right off the bat, we were very successful. You see here our first results from last year in January, our discovery hole. It's a very nice hole down to 800 meters, over 800 meters, mineralized top to bottom. It ended in mineralization. The overall intercept was 763 meters of 0.28% copper equivalent. So good already. And then we continued drilling in the summer, and that's where we really hit it out of the park. You see here one of the holes we drilled. That was really a game changer for the company. 535 meters of 0.76% copper equivalent. So that's 3 times the grade of the neighboring mine. And within this long intercept, there was a much higher grade zone in the middle. So great discovery. We know now that there are high grade zones present and lots more work to come to follow up on those. You see here our targets. That's the grade zone. We've drilled 100 meters. And the total anomaly is 3 kilometers. So we'll drill those this year. And then in the same area next door, we have another very similar target, Dillard, same size, large, and we'll drill that too. So lots of drilling. We have 30,000 meters of drilling planned. Big drill program, lots of news to come in 2021. Last but not least, our capital structure, our share price, very tightly held. Our share price jumped to over $3 when we had our initial discovery. It's now in the 140 or so range. So has pulled back a bit. And Teck is our largest shareholder, management 8.6%. Lots of news to come in 21, and I'm pretty confident we can end the year on a higher share price than we started. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam?
Claudia, thank you very much. That was a really great overview, especially in such a short period of time. Our next presenter is Ali Haji, who's the CEO of Ion Energy. By way of background, Ali holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Western Ontario. He serves as an advisor to Atma Capital Partners in Toronto and Step Gold, and he's also a director of Antler Hill Mining and Spirit Banner. Ali, great having you here. Your stock's at a good performance, so I believe since September. Please fill us in on Ion Energy.
You're muted. Your microphone.
Sorry,
Thank
Ali,
you, Sam, for the introduction, and thank you, my fellow panelists, for sharing the podium with me, and I look forward to telling you our story. Ion Energy is a company that I co-founded in 2017 during a visit to Mongolia as an advisor, as Sam pointed out, to Step Gold. It was formed on the backbone of sort of knowing Mongolia as a jurisdiction, but also understanding its vast potential. So I would encourage you to visit our website to read our disclaimers, similar to the forward-looking statements that were referenced earlier. So why Mongolia? Mongolia is a country that's about 1.5 million square kilometers with a population of about 3.5 million people. So to put that in perspective, it's about 1.5 times the size of Ontario, with a population slightly smaller than that of the Toronto city proper. Given the fact that it is so sparsely populated and is a very recent sort of world economy, it is vastly underdeveloped and vastly underexplored. Looking at Mongolia in 2017, we formed Ion on the back of what would have been deemed the last cycle in battery metals. With everything, you would expect that battery metals would be cyclical. And so we went down the path of looking for lithium in country. We found a number of different things that I'll speak to in just a second here, but importantly, I think it had to do a lot with the work that was done historically by the Russian government, along with the Mongolian and Russian government, and then more recently by the University of Science and Technology. My fellow presenter referenced the importance of copper as the world starts to go electric, and I think it goes without saying that lithium is an integral part of that green revolution that is upon us. So Mongolia is a jurisdiction that can be quite exotic for most of us, and I think prior to my involvement with STEP, it was always a fascination with Genghis Khan and the like, and I didn't know much about the country. But as I mentioned, it is very, very underexplored and underdeveloped. As a result of that, it has a vast amount of potential. We talked about Oyu Tolgoi in the previous presentation, and I think what's important to note is more and more discoveries are being made in Mongolia. Mongolia's GDP is very greatly driven by mining. And so the government in the last 10 years or so has been extremely supportive of foreign investment and movers such as ourselves. We are first movers in the lithium brine space in the region. So, we talk about Mongolia, again, an exotic jurisdiction, but we're working with a team that has had over a decade worth of experience in country. So, our very first foray was that of Matthew Wood, my chairman, when he went to Mongolia just over 10 years ago during the last gold boom, was able to acquire a number of coal assets because coal was of significant interest to investors. Raised enough money to go public on the ASX for $20 million, spent that money to de-risk those assets and accelerate exploration programs as well as an acquisition strategy, which he ultimately sold to Banpu of Thailand for $500 million 18 months later. So that, as you could imagine, did very well for the country, did very well for local shareholders, and also did very well to build goodwill for ourselves and the country as well. Step Gold, a company that I mentioned earlier as an advisor, that was an acquisition from Centerra in 2016. It was the only gold mining IPO of the year on the TSX in 2018. It's a nod to the team to get something like that over the line during a very tough market. Step went public in May of 2018 and first gold pour in March of 2020 when the world was just entering this pandemic. So with Ion, we're planning to very much mirror what Matt and the team have done with Hunu. And just to give you some background on the team, Sam gave you a pretty good introduction of myself. Matthew Wood, who's my chairman, has had a significant amount of experience, not only in Mongolia, but internationally, building and ultimately exiting mines, including Avanco Resources in Brazil that sold to Oz Minerals for $440 million in 2018. Neil Varach is a director, but also an investment banking professional, ex-Dundee, ex-Goodman. John McVicker, an old partner at EY that came out of retirement to join our team, and Tuship Kishuk-Surin, lovingly named Enki, an exploration guru that knows the region quite well. Bata Tumur Ochir, our second Mongolian director. You'll notice that we operate as a Mongolian company trading on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Bata is a special advisor to the Minister of Mines. He was with the previous government. He was reappointed with the new government, and that speaks to our ability of being politically agnostic in country and ultimately driving results. The two individuals that I would really like to highlight here are Paul Fornazzari. He was the original chairman of Lithium Americas, now valued at $2.2 billion. He was instrumental in doing the deal with Ganfeng. He also brought in investment from Magna and Mitsubishi into Lithium Americas. He was a director at Neo Lithium and is currently a partner at Fasken. Paul likes to joke that we won't make the mistakes they made historically in those two companies because we'll have a smaller subset to work off of. So we're very, very fortunate to have an individual of his caliber on our advisory board. The other individual is Don Haynes. Don Haynes has been a pioneer, if you will, in the lithium brine space around the world. He's explored for lithium all over the world. He took a look at our geology last summer along with Paul, and they were excited by the prospect of joining our team. Don actually worked with the Ontario Securities Commission and the Toronto Stock Exchange to define what a 43-101 should look like in the brine space in order for a brine company to go public. So having an individual of his expertise on our advisory team is truly invaluable. So let's talk about our license here for a second. And I mentioned earlier that there was work done historically. Balai Ol, which is our flagship project in the South Gobi region of Mongolia, Sukhbatar, about 30 kilometers from the Chinese border, 24 kilometers by road. In the 50s, the Russian government, when Mongolia was part of Russia, did some drilling in and around the Sukhbatar region. They were able to extract a brine aquifer and chalked it down to not being potable as a result of the levels of salts in it. In the 1990s, the Russian government and the Mongolian government did a similar exercise and were able to extract this very same aquifer from about 20 meters below surface. It wasn't until 2016 that Dr. Hashpat Dashtatserin, who is a PhD lithium hydrogeologist at the University of Science and Technology at Ulaanbaatar, spent a significant amount of time traversing sort of the southern bits of the country looking for lithium. He was able to find hard rock near surface of up to 2% and above in some cases. But importantly for us, when they drilled on our license, they were able to extract up to 811 ppm. So that was the max grade obtained very close to surface, and an average grade of 426 ppm. Both these samples were obtained about 70 kilometers apart on what did become our 81,000 hectare license, the largest land package ever to be granted to a private company by the government of Mongolia for any resource. And that speaks to our good relationships in country. If you look at the map on the right, you notice we're extremely close to Erlian. Erlian is the primary border crossing into China, and China is Mongolia's largest trading partner. Looking at the environment that we operate in, it is a Gobi desert. It mirrors very much what you'd find in the Lithium Triangle or the Atacama, short of the altitude. And with 250 days of sunshine and very high winds, it would aid in evaporation should we choose to use that as our potential extraction strategy. So, we talked about battery metals previously, and I think it's important to note that historically this was thought as a cyclical sort of cycle where lithium would return and we would have a cycle, and much like any other mineral, it would sort of fade away. But that's truly not the case. This is a revolution. The company strongly believes that over the course of COVID, governments around the world have declared billions of dollars, euros, and pounds towards a green recovery. To give you one such example, the EU announced 750 billion euro as a COVID recovery fund. 576 billion of that was allocated, or rather footnoted with a sustainable caveat. And 20 billion was directly allocated to EV subsidization and gigafactory development. The UK followed suit with £1 billion, and with the recent inauguration of Biden, he's allocating 400 billion over the next 4 years. We've already seen in this space a vertical integration unlike anything else in the resource world. When governments print money to incentivize the adoption of electric vehicles, it prompts companies like Mercedes to go out and buy a stake in a battery manufacturer named Ferasis in China, who then did an offtake agreement with a mine in Australia for their lithium. So this vertical integration from government down to actual raw material is unlike anything we've seen in the space. And that, coupled with the subsidies being provided by government to consumers, has sort of pushed forward the deployment of an LFP battery, which is a lithium ferrophosphate battery. It has increased the range of a battery from 100,000 miles to 1,000,000 miles before it requires replacement. And it has reduced the cost by about 40% of that battery. So that's exclusive to all Teslas being produced in China, but also allocated for 10 EU markets. You couple this reduction in cost from a manufacturing standpoint with the government subsidies, and what you end up having is a state where the world will be able to sell Tesla Model 3s in and around the same price of a Honda Corolla, a Honda Civic, or a Toyota Corolla. So this revolution is coming, and this is ultimately where it begins. Having chatted with the analysts at Canaccord last week and having seen data from Benchmark in China as well, the inflection point has been reached. The bottom has been reached. We're seeing early warning symbols come in, and we expect things to start to improve along with pricing. So I won't belabor you on that. We started exploration in October of last year. Results will be forthcoming. I'll quickly touch on this, but what's important to note is our upcoming catalysts. We started trading on the OTC. We're announcing additional license acquisitions. We will show results. We went public at 30 cents. Our market cap, as you pointed out, is 25-ish million. Some analysts have valued us at post-money close to 43 million. So there's still a lot of upside to go there. But I know I've gone wrong, and I thank you very much for your time.
Great. Ollie, thanks very much for a great overview. And at this point in time, it's a privilege to introduce TakeStock's very own Mark Francis to lead the panel discussion. Great having you here as always.
Well, thank you, Sam. And now we get, it's a mild interrogation today. The first question up for Ali and Claudia, thinking about your local geology, can you compare the geology to similar deposits? Claudia, in your case, those being mined nearby in the region, and in your case, Ali, can you talk about other areas where brines are, in fact, are mined? Claudia, you're muted.
Here we go. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now? Perfect. Yeah, in our case, we are very fortunate with the MPD project that we have mines that are very similar in geology and structurally similar very nearby, in particular Copper Mountain, which is in the same trend and just 30, 40 kilometers to our south. That obviously helps our exploration, that we have an analog that we can look at. And that's, yeah, a big bonus.
Can you be more explicit in terms of what are the structural similarities?
Well, I'm not a geologist, but it's our MPD project has all the hallmarks of an alkalic porphyry system, just like Copper Mountain is to our south, and they have multiple porphyry centers, which is what we see on our MPD project as well. One of them we have drilled very successfully in the last year. More are on the list going forward. So that's essentially how I'd sum it up.
Thanks, Claudia. Mark, in our case, where we have our license, our Balhai-Ul license, it actually sits on what's called an endoheric basin. And what that means is any precipitation that's fallen on this region since the Cretaceous period has percolated through the rocks and built this aquifer beneath surface. So if you compare the lithium triangle in Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina, where the vast majority of the lithium from brines comes from in the world, they also operate in what's called an endoheric basin. That geological similarity in itself is what led us to this license in particular. And knowing that we control a vast majority of that basin is really where we expect the upside to come.
Okay, good. I believe endoheric means not draining out, right? An endoheric, precisely. Yes, an endoheric lake is one that never flows out, right?
Precisely.
Yeah. So, and this one, Ali, you may not be able to answer directly. Let's have you go first. But can you talk about grades comparing to these other deposits or deposits that are known in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, at 811 ppm, that's still pretty good relative to folks that are in production at about 450 ppm in the Atacama. So 811, very close to surface, having been obtained, you know, in the early days as we've just started to kick off exploration in October. And having chatted with the likes of Don, who is extremely technical in the field and understands what these deposits look like, the belief is that as we start to go deeper and we start to actually tap into that aquifer or that brine body beneath surface, we would expect greater grades than that. So at 811, we're still commercially viable. We're still pretty good grade relative to a lot of producers, but we think there's further potential as we start to go deeper.
Claudia, and if you could also talk about widths in your case, Claudia.
Yeah, well, we are in British Columbia, and it's obviously porphyry territory. The grades you see typically, and what's most relevant to us is, of course, the neighboring mines. That's grades of 0.24% copper in the case of Copper Mountain and 0.3% copper in the case of Highland Valley. Both of them have a cutoff of 0.1% copper. So that's sort of the benchmarks we're looking at. And last year, when we drilled successfully the gate zone, we discovered a high-grade zone where we had over 500 meters, over half a kilometer of 0.76% copper equivalent. That's obviously very high grade, particularly in this area, and that's a great bonus. Porphyry, very typically, you have a large, lower grade body of mineralization and then higher grade porphyry centers, and those are very important for the eventual economics of a mine. So the fact that we are able to hit a really nice high grade zone right off the bat is obviously great and a great start, and yeah, bodes very well for our work going forward.
Do you have any indication of width at this point on the gate zone?
Well, we've only just started. We've drilled in total nine holes in 2020. So we're only at the beginning. We've drilled down to 800 meters and have stepped out just over 100 meters and have drilled sort of over a width of 300 meters, the high grade zone. So that gives you a little bit the dimensions of our initial drilling. But as I said, this is really the first step. We have copper in soil anomaly of 1 kilometer, which is our prime target area, which will now systematically step out. And then the underlying geophysical anomaly is 3 kilometers in length. And so, yeah, we just still have a lot more drilling to do and lots more drill results to come for our shareholders.
Right. So now let's talk about your specific exploration objectives. To what extent is your intent to demonstrate resource and get to definition, or is it to find additional potential targets? So if you can give us a little more precision on exactly what your objectives are, Claudia, and then Ali.
Yep. In our case, Kodiak really is about discovery at this stage, and resource, etc., is still sometime in the future. So for the next year, we'll be doing a lot of drilling, 30,000 meters, and our shareholders should expect lots of drill results, hopefully more high-grade drill results, and a very news-rich year. And yeah, it's all about discovery.
Sorry, I was muted there, but we are an extremely early stage project, having been first movers in the lithium brine space in Mongolia, going off of the information that was provided to us, over a number of decades, if you will. So we commenced what's called a geophysics CSAMT program in October. That'll give us the conductivity of the ground and determine essentially where the vast majority of those minerals lie. We'll then continue a seismic program that's a microseismic 8x10 on 8x10 kilometer strikes, about 70 kilometers apart from where we obtained our samples. This will give us a sense of the thickness, the depth, the width of that ultimate brine body beneath surface. Beyond that, we'll put our auger rig on the ground. We purchased an auger rig in 2019 because we had every intent of being public in 2019, but obviously the markets weren't as favorable. So the equipment's on the ground, and that auger rig will allow us to extract that brine sample and send it on for sampling in Ulaanbaatar. So you can rudimentarily reach, a resource estimation, understanding here's your average grade, here's what the size of that brine body looks like, or the volume of that brine body. It's not 43101 compliant, it's not JORC compliant, but you can rudimentarily come up with a resource estimate in that regard. We'll then be deploying a diamond core rig. The diamond core rig will allow us to understand the porosity of the material that we're operating in. I like to use the example of a Wendy's Frosty. You go to Wendy's and you get a Frosty. First time you get it, it's really quite solid, and good luck trying to suck that up with a straw. So there could be a ton of lithium there, but until there is porosity, you're not going to be able to pull up that brine aquifer. So you're going to start to see results from the company every sort of 3 to 5 weeks on an ongoing basis as we ramp up on exploration. And we would expect that we'd have that early resource indication in and around the summer mark.
Well, you've taken my, you answered the next question, Ali, about timing. Claudia, can you give us a bit of a sense of the pacing of your drilling? And we know the labs are all behind right now, of course, but if you could give us a sense of timing.
Yes, we are still waiting for some results from last year's drilling and are promised those by the lab in early mid-February. And we are at the moment very busy already to prepare for the start of the drilling again. We took a break over the Christmas period and are at the moment moving premises into a bigger core logging facility, a bigger core to accommodate the bigger drill program that's ongoing as we speak. And as soon as we're moved in and have a roof over our heads, we will be mobilizing again and start drilling in February. And from then on, it'll be a steady flow of drill news throughout the year.
Okay, good. Now, question just for Claudia. Have you done any metallurgical work on the core?
It's too early for metallurgical work. We're only really a couple of months into a discovery. What we've seen so far, or what we have not seen, is anything that would give us any concern. There are no nasties, arsenic, chromium, or anything like that in our assays. And the mine next door, which is very similar mineralization, host rocks, etc., Copper Mountain, they produce a very nice, clean concentrate. So we don't see anything that would worry us. And yeah, as I said, metallurgy is still sometime in the future. Very
good. And Ali, talk about evaporation rates on the Mongolian steppe or in the Gobi Desert relative to the Atacama, and do you have any other indications of the expense of process recovery if you decide to use evaporite ponds?
Yeah, no, you hit you sort of close that question off with the right sentiment, is if we decide to use evaporation ponds. Being in the Atacama, the evaporation rates, and I had to look this up, but you're looking at close to 7.14 millimeters a day in the Atacama at those altitudes, and that's pretty significant. I know that we're operating at a lower altitude, and I've been told from the advisors that we have that we're not going to have a similar rate of evaporation. But what will be aiding our rate of evaporation is the fact that we have 250 days of sunshine and very high winds. The winds in the region are actually why the Mongolian government has now put in place a lot of wind farms in the region. And we know based on typical physics that as wind picks up, evaporation also picks up. So have we chosen to do evaporation? It's far too early to tell. Are we going to use direct extraction? Again, the same answer applies. I think once we understand the chemistry a little better, we can then put together a plan to extract it at an economically viable cost using one of those two methodologies.
Okay, very good. Let's talk a little bit about community relations. Can you tell us a little more about your community relations? Just dive a little deeper than you have so
absolutely.
far.
And I'll just touch on one thing very quickly here. We've also ordered a weather station. And I think it's imperative that you understand the climate in the region that you're looking to operate. So that sort of answers the previous question. But as far as the community relations, the Mongolian People's Party was re-elected last June for an additional 4 years. It's the same government that's been extremely supportive of our group in general. In fact, the first sovereign wealth fund investment ever as a country was in Steppe Gold last year. So the relationships are there with government. The local SUMs that we operate in, SUMs are essentially a municipality, if you will. We do work with them. We continually operate as a Mongolian company. We employ a vast majority of Mongolians. In fact, we have no expats in country in Mongolia today. We might have one that visits Don, our technical advisor, but everything that we've done in country over the last 10 years has always been staffed, manned, and operated by Mongolian nationals, because there is that skilled labor set there. That goes a long way in building goodwill, not only with the government, but with the local individuals that live in and around your premises. We tend to employ and train those local individuals. We also build co-ops to obtain all our food and dairy and everything else that we may require in order to keep our minds going from that local SUM. And we're actually in the process of assisting them with specific COVID-related items that would help reduce infection rates. So building goodwill with the people, working with the government, operating as a Mongolian company that's purely listed on the TSX has allowed us a lot of flexibility and liberty in this space. So no problems at all with the locals.
Claudia?
Well, community relations, and in our case, relations with First Nations, are obviously very, very important. And in our case, we do not touch the ground. We do not put a spade into the ground or drill a hole or do anything without consulting with the local First Nations first. And that's a very good process. They come, do a heritage survey, look at all the locations where we want to drill or do any work, and then give us their recommendations. And the First Nations in the area, they are actually really clued up. They know mining. They're technically very, very good. And it's been a real pleasure working with them. It's an ongoing relationship, and it works very well.
Is it the same group, the same First Nation that has a relation that Copper Mountain works with?
Well, there are a number of different First Nations who have their territory in the area. We work with the Inklakapma, with the Upper Similkanen, with the Lower Nicola. So there are different ones, and we consult with them all.
Okay, very good. Well, my last question for the two of you, you're both very efficient, by the way, at answering questions. I appreciate that. Do you have any additional projects you haven't talked about? And would you like, if you do, would you like to put a little perspective on them? Claudia and then Ali.
Well, we have another copper porphyry in Arizona called Mojave, which we acquired around the same time as MPD. It's very similar story, historically drilled, but nobody has really figured it out yet. And we think there's a lot of discovery potential there. That's also on our list. Obviously, now that we've had so much success at MPD, we've been very focused on MPD the last couple of months. But Mojave is also a very promising project, and we'll do some more work on it this year and get our hands dirty in Arizona as well.
Thanks. And in our case, lithium, and much like any mineral, it's a quality, not quantity. And while we have one of the largest licenses, granted in some cases anywhere in the world for lithium brine, the quality that we've seen on the existing license at this early stage is quite promising. But absolutely, we're looking at additional licenses in country for acquisition. Whether they're hard rock or brine is yet to be determined. But having seen the work that the government has done over the course of their geological surveys, we know that there's lithium there, and we're going to work with them to help extract it. Unlike Claudia and Kodiak, our focus is primarily Mongolian, so we won't be venturing outside of Mongolia for any acquisitions.
But you're both very similar in that you are focusing on what you know.
Precisely.
Right? So, and you are looking at other projects, but they coincide very precisely with what you know and know well and are pursuing, which also makes for a coherent story for investors, by the way. So appreciate very much your answers today. I am out of questions and very much have enjoyed this session. And Sam, thank you very much for bringing these two excellent companies to us. So thank you to our presenters. May you have excellent success in your ongoing exploration. Claudia Tornquist, Kodiak Copper Corp, KDK, and Ali Haji, Ion Energy Ltd, ION being the symbol. Thank you, Sam of Sterling Merchant Capital, and to you, our attendees, thank you for your time today. Do go to today's company's websites, learn more about them, and check in at TakeStockLive.com. Be determined in your due diligence and ask tough questions. We'll be back next Wednesday, the 3rd of February. This is Mark and Raj signing out from TakeStock Live.
Thanks, everybody.